Okay, so this is Start with Why. I've been reading this. That's a big why there. It's just kind of rubbed off. So it's a book by Simon Sinek, and it's probably kind of famous because he's done a very good TED talk. There's a thing on the back about a TED talk. So he does kind of summarize what he's talked about in the book, in the TED talk. But he obviously goes into things in a bit more depth here. So essentially, what he's saying is, and it's start with why, how great leaders inspire everyone to take action. And really, what he's saying is what it says on the book, start with why. Why are you actually doing something? So he looks at a lot of big companies, and it's kind of like a personal development book, but also a kind of corporate development book. He looks at the reason why a lot of big companies are the way they are, and what he says is that they have articulated their why they are in business in the first place. So something like Apple is there to, it's really about Steve Jobs, and his why was to take on the establishment. And then he from why, that's his reason, and then from that he has people around him who implement the how they implement that why, and then there's the what, which is what they produce. So although he's famous for the Apple Mac and the iPhone, he could have been selling, I don't know, cabbage or something like that, or fruit, but his why is always going to be there, and that's the thing that shines through, that comes through with the company like Apple. But what he also says is that sometimes the why becomes blurred and fuzzy, and you forget why you did something. So that applies to not just companies, but to people as well, and things that we do. We forget why we did them, and that's when the motivation goes, the sense of who you are goes, and you have to rediscover that. So that I quite liked. So start with why. The why could be your initial passion, your empowering context, what you see as your cause, I suppose, your rallying cry. Maybe that's what that's all about. That's your why. And he talks about this thing called a golden circle. So that's like, you've got the why in the middle, then the how, and then the what. And he also talks about some companies who've forgotten their why, been really successful, and then all they're about is what. So like he talks about companies like Walmart, which I think is a big American company, who initially the why was providing stuff for every man in America, for the ordinary folk, and then it sort of becomes diffuse, and it just becomes about I don't know what they started doing, but they forgot about why they were Walmart and what it was about them, and about the people in Walmart, and when it becomes what, then you get caught up in things like selling things at discount and manipulations to try and get something 2 for 1, and I suppose they're all kind of based in fear, and that's kind of more like a manipulation rather than a kind of passionate cause that you're fighting for. So that's kind of what the book was about. It was quite. It's a good book. It was very interesting. It got a wee bit draggy towards the end. He kind of went on and on a bit about some of the things. He talks about the kind of megaphone that you build, and initially there's one person with a why who says the cause, and then you have the people around him who are like the how, and then the what is at the end, what actually gets developed. And he talks about people like Martin Luther King, who have a very clear sense of why they're doing what they're doing, and then obviously he develops a mass movement around them. And I think what it is that people, the interesting thing he said was that people don't buy what you make, they buy why you make it. So it's like, yeah, so it's like why you make it, it's the why, it's that passion. And when it's like just about what you're making, then it just becomes another piece of technology or another whatever, or another airline seat. It's about why the why. The other company he talks about is Southwest Airlines. I don't know much about them. It's an American airline. Apparently, it's the biggest selling, most profitable airline in the world. And I think the idea about them is that they were like, it was like airfare, air passage for the ordinary man. So there was like no frills, not quite like EasyJet, but it was like no frills, and at some point they forgot that, and then the sales went down and everything. And I don't know if they're getting back to that, but again, that's another company that he uses an example of. So that's that. I mean, there's various things he chats about, and then he talks about, the biggest challenge for any organization is actually success. So when the company's small, the why is clearly articulated because the actual owner turns up, the actual person, the founder turns up. He personifies the whole why. So for Apple, it's what's his face? It's Steve Jobs, and for Microsoft, it's Bill Gates. And then what happens is everything he does is in line with the why he's doing it. But then later on, it becomes diffused, and that kind of, he does a wee thing here where the kind of success of the company goes, or what they measure success by kind of goes down, because there's a bit of a split. So I think is an interesting thing he said is like, there's no longer a cathedral to build. The passion is gone and inspiration is at a minimum, and then people just show up for what they do as just a job. And if that's how people on the inside feel, how do those people on the outside feel? So I suppose it's about, the other thing about this book is, I suppose it's about questioning why you're doing something in the first place, getting that passion back into what you do. And there's a few things actually I must admit, I even things that I've been involved with where I've had no passion left. And it's only now when I think about it, I thought the reason I did it in the first place, I've forgotten why I did it in the first place. Somewhere along the line, it's become something else, and it's not even been what I wanted or what the why I had in my mind. It was what somebody else wanted or what somebody else wanted to do, and that's why there was no passion in it. Anyway, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Maybe gone on a bit. Hope you, if any of you look at that, let me know. In fact, it was somebody that's on this group. It was his brother it was somebody on this group actually said something, and that made me think, hang on, that sounds a bit like that book. So thanks a lot, Omar. But anybody else reads this, let me know what you think of it.